Hello and welcome to What's New in Aerospace. I'm Marty Kelsey, one of the hosts of STEM in 30, an Emmy-nominated TV show for students produced by the National Air and Space Museum. Today's program is all about Mars exploration, and specifically, we will be talking about the United Arab Emirates' first mission to Mars. But this is your program. We want to give you a shout out. Head down to the comments section and let us know where you're watching from. And while you're there, hit the like and share button. That really helps us out and lets others know about this program. We also want you to drive the conversation today. We have some amazing guests who you will meet soon. Let us know what questions you have. Put them down in the comments and we will get to as many of them as we can. Now let's bring in our guests. Her Excellency Sarah Al Amiri, the UAE Minister of State for Advanced Technology, Omran Sharaf, Project Director of the Emirates Mars Mission, and Dr. Shindell, Curator in the Space History Department of the National Air and Space Museum. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thanks. Thank you.
This is going to be a fun conversation. And remember, let us know what questions you have for our guests down in the comments section. Sarah, let's start with you. Can you tell us about the UAE space program?
So I think it was quite odd for a lot of people, including perhaps for ourselves, to go from working on Earth observation satellites to working on designing and developing a mission to Mars. The primary purpose of the space program in the UAE when it was first established about 15 years ago was to develop capabilities of engineers and scientists and utilizing space as one of the means to do that. The Mars program got us to a point where we're able to work together with our knowledge partners out of the United States on building expertise within the country, enhancing current expertise, and getting to a point where we're able to design a very complex mission and a very risky mission. These two aspects are very important for us as a country as we continue diversifying our economy and strengthening capabilities and talent that are working in the fields of technology as they continue to have both impact on the economy, but more importantly also on society at large. As we went throughout the last few years on developing this mission to a point where we are at today, we've seen a mechanism by which a country can develop a sector and an industry that didn't exist before. We've seen more and more students in the Emirates and children in the Emirates become inspired by space and think of an area and a sector, be it in tech development or in science, that quite widely inspires them to be able to dream of working in a field that myself and Omran, growing up as kids here, never thought that it was possible for us to have such wide and overarching dreams and aspirations to work on. And as we continue to see this resonating, especially with the arrival of Mars, it showed the possibility of taking on large risks that is absolutely necessary for establishing any tech field in any country. And more importantly, the possibility of bringing together something that a lot of people thought was not possible to accomplish in the number of years that this was done. It allowed us to look at a different way of developing an industry, another way of designing a spacecraft to explore another planet, rethinking a mechanism by which you enable talent, but more importantly, for the very first time, provide a wider field of work for those that are studying the natural sciences and scientists within an entire nation. It's been quite a transformative effect. We're seeing today the after effects of it, be it in the prioritizations of what is important on the national level. It brought science, technology, research, development, capability and capacity development at the forefront of discussions today, and it has enabled an entire science community within the country and also within the region to aspire to utilize such fields as space as a stabilizer for an unstable region and for a developer of a better future in terms of the economy and also of society.
I love how you mentioned the inspirational part of it, because it absolutely is. You know, you've got kids looking up to the stars, which is amazing. Omran, can you tell us about this mission specifically?
So just to build on what Sarah just mentioned, basically, so this mission was part of this bigger picture. So the UAE started the space program is because it wanted to address its national challenges, but at the same time it wanted to build its economy, the future of its economy. through this mission, the UAE government gave us a set of requirements. And one main requirement was this mission has to be a catalyst for a disruptive change within the science technology sector in the UAE, and also amongst the mindset and the youth of the UAE, to create a research and development-oriented culture. Why? Because the UAE government believes it's critical for the future of our economy to have a creative, innovative, and a competitive knowledge-based economy. And to do that, we need to have a very strong science base. So the UAE government is using space as a mean and a tool, or this mission, the Mars mission, as a mean and a tool to build and expedite building those capabilities within the country. Nations usually that go and explore outer space, especially more specifically even deep space, tend to have their own science and technology sector established before taking that approach of sending a mission to explore Mars or any other planet. However, the UAE took a different approach. We actually use space to build our science technology base and capacity and capability here in the country. And this mission was the main driver behind that. And the thing is also, one big main thing about the mission, and if you look at the name HOPE, it was called HOPE, it was for it to send a message to the Emirati youth and also to the Arab youth. You're talking about the region in the Middle East. We have more than 300 million people living in this region. From the 300 million, about more than 100 million are youth. So that's a huge portion of the population. If they don't invest their time and their efforts in the right ways, they'll either leave the region, which is not going to help the region move forward, or they'll invest their energy in the wrong ways. So, and if you look at the region currently, and since for the past decades, I mean, it's not been smooth. And as the UAE, we need to have a stable region around us to be able to have a sustainable development program. And it's always better to have stability around you to be able to progress. So the message that the UAE would like to send to the Arab youth is that if a young nation like the UAE is able to reach Mars in less than 50 years, then you can do much more. Given the history of this region, how we used to be generators of knowledge, how people used to coexist here. We have scientists centuries ago and decades ago lived in this region from different backgrounds, from different religions, all coexisted and lived together and built the region. And we're generating knowledge that served humanity. The moment we stopped generating that new knowledge, the moment we started not accepting differences and coexistence and tolerating other views or other thoughts, as a region we started moving backwards. But then you have an example here in the region, something like the UAE, less than 50 years old, that has more than 200 nationalities living here. Everyone contributed in building our nation and in helping UAE reach Mars. And the nice thing about the Emirates Mars mission is that the direction from the government was basically, when this mission was announced, we had literally a very limited budget, and the time frame that we had to deliver the mission with was basically almost half of what other nations usually need or take to be able to deliver similar missions. So we had only 6 years to deliver the mission. And the reason why we were able to do that is because we didn't start from scratch. We learned from others, and we collaborated, and we worked with international academic partners. And this is a part of the Emirati or the UAE model that we'd like to share with the rest of the world. So the government told us very clearly, don't start from scratch, start where others ended. Do not buy the spacecraft, build it. Learn from others, work with knowledge transfer partners like you did in the past, but do not buy the system or do not buy the spacecraft. So we had to build it with our knowledge transfer partners. And we had to basically integrate people from different backgrounds, different cultures, and work with the Emirati team to deliver the mission. And the other thing that the government said basically to the team was that the science has to be novel. So it shouldn't be something that's been done before. We need to give back to humanity. This is a scientific mission. And all the knowledge and all the data that we'll be bringing from this mission will be shared with everyone with no restrictions. So these are the set of the requirements that basically the government set for this. And again, it was about inspiring Emirati youth also to go into STEM. And we've seen a big shift in the mindset of the Emirati youth because of the mission. Universities, for example, that didn't have or didn't offer science programs started offering science programs of the mission, because of the mission. Students who were studying finance and international relations shifted majors and started studying physics, chemistry, and math. We saw that in front of us happening, and we felt the impact of that mission on changing the mindset and the language of the youth, and the ownership of the Emirati youth when it comes to the different space activities that the UAE has, and how involved and interested they are compared to what used to be a couple of years ago before the mission was announced. So this is the story behind Emirates Mars Mission, and this is basically was the driver for the mission. It's beyond reaching Mars. It's more about using Mars as a mean for a much bigger objective.
Awesome. And you speak about the students, and we've got 6th graders from Elk Grove, California watching, as well as folks tuning in from the Netherlands, Tennessee, New York City, Texas, North Carolina, Liberty, Missouri, pretty sure that's my mom, Maryland, Wisconsin, and Illinois. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Matt, I want to ask you, why is this story important for the National Air and Space Museum to tell?
Sure. Well, there's a few reasons, I think, why this mission is very exciting, and the story around it is one that the museum is very interested in telling. And the first reason is that it's about Mars. We love Mars. We've sent more spacecraft. Human beings have sent more spacecraft to Mars than to any other planet, and we've been studying it with spacecraft since the 1960s. So our knowledge of Mars, as we know it today, is really relatively young, and it's an ongoing process of exploring that planet. And the second reason that we find this mission interesting, I think, is because it is an orbiter mission. Orbiters are kind of, I think, the unsung heroes of Mars exploration. It was only 50 years ago, in fact, just a few days ago, on May 30th, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the launch of the first orbiter that successfully did science in orbit around Mars, and that was the Mariner 9 orbiter. And having that orbiter there at Mars completely transformed our view of what Mars was. Up until that orbiter flew, we hadn't seen the kind of really interesting features that on Mars that now fascinate us, like the huge volcanoes, Valles Marineris, the huge trench that's really about as long as the whole continental United States of America in length. If you go from California to New York, that's pretty much the length of that canyon system. And it also showed us these really interesting features on the surface of Mars that looked like they had been carved by water. And it was our first real glimpse at the fact that Mars has this deep past where it was a warmer and wetter world. And so orbiter missions like that and others that followed it, like Mars Global Surveyor and now the HOPE mission and a lot of others in between, have really told that story or helped us to tell that story of what Mars is. And it's a story that really we're still trying to piece together, because studying an entire planet just over the course of 50 years, it's definitely, there's a learning curve of trying to put that story together. It doesn't come together all at once. And then finally, I think, the reason why this story is so interesting is because, of course, we're interested in the question of, why do we explore space? Why do we send spacecraft out there? And part of the answer is, of course, that we want to know, right? We want to know about Mars and about space, and we want to understand our own place in the solar system and in the universe. But it's also connected to economies and politics. And, I really love this mission in particular because it did take a different approach, as we just heard, in terms of it being a mission that's designed not necessarily to build on existing infrastructure, but to help build infrastructure for this mission and then for future missions and for an entire new sector in the economy. Really, it's designed to intervene and make change on the ground, not just to do great things in space. But it's also designed to do great things in space. And it's going to be incredibly valuable to have the knowledge that this spacecraft has been designed to gather in terms of understanding Mars's atmosphere better, which is one part of Mars that we really don't yet have a great handle on, is how the Martian atmosphere works and what the history of that atmosphere is. So that's my answer in a nutshell.
All right, well, we've got Joni, a fifth grader from Arkansas, tuning in. Thank you all for watching. And if you've got questions, please put them down in the comments section and let us know where you're watching from. We'll be giving shout outs throughout the rest of the program. I've got a question that's come in for Sarah and Omran. When you all grew up, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, there wasn't a space program. What's it feel like now knowing that you're kind of paving that road for others with this space program? And did you ever think you'd actually be working for the UAE space program?
I think
Sarah,
we both have. Yeah, I think we both have different stories of that. No, I never thought that I would ever work in any space program per se. And that back reflecting as a mother, seeing my children live through this journey of building and working on a mission to Mars, it's normalized space exploration in an amazing way, and opened up possibilities. You see their language changing on what they can and can't do. There's not a lot of can't do, which is great with children who are meant to be explorers well into their lifetimes. It's just opened an entirely new facet. And that's actually my son in the picture. So I was quite surprised that you got in that. And that was a few years ago. And it's quite remarkable to see parents accepting their children to have aspirations in space, not telling them that that's an audacious dream that's not going to happen, and engaging. We've seen, at least over the course of the last few months, since the launch to Mars, and especially since the arrival to Mars, entire households across so many different generations slightly change their perception about science and technology, and change their perception on what possibilities are available. And at the end of the day, that is one of the primary cornerstones that you require for any nation to continue prospering and growing. And that's an environment that you want your children to grow up in, an environment that shows them the possibilities and allows them to select what they're passionate about. You know, Omran, if you have a different story to add to that.
No, just, I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, did I dream about working on a space program when I was young? Yes, I did. Did I think it's going to happen when I was young? I didn't think so. I thought there's a lot of work needs to be done. We didn't have that science base that we're talking about now. We didn't have our experts. We didn't have our infrastructure, the knowledge that we needed to be able to do that. And I thought, you know, it's a long shot. And eventually it will happen. I believe that it's going to happen. But I didn't think that I'll be part of it. I didn't expect it to happen that fast. I mean, I never thought that the fact that that I'm working on a mission to Mars, that didn't even cross my mind. I mean, at that stage, I think the most that we had here in the UAE was the launch of a commercial spacecraft that was bought for a commercial purpose. So we were only operators of these space assets. We're not even developers of those space assets, and it's more of a commercial focus on communication satellites, the Thuraya satellites. So yeah.
That's amazing. And Matt, I've got one more question for you that has come in. How does the National Air and Space Museum approach collecting artifacts from international partners and to help tell those stories?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's very complicated, actually, to try and collect space hardware from other countries, because that hardware tends to be connected to other technologies that are related to, you know, intelligence gathering and other things. So there are a lot of rules and restrictions around collecting technologies. But, you know, we try our best because we do want to represent more than just the United States space program here in the National Air and Space Museum.
All right, we've got folks from California watching. Let us know where you're watching from, and let us know what questions you have down in the comments section. Now, Matt, I know you've got a couple of questions to ask, so I'm going to turn it over to you for a second.
Yeah, so let me just start out with, you know, I think the question that I've always wondered as someone who gets to watch planetary science happen but doesn't actually partake in it. Your spacecraft has been at Mars now since February, so you spent a few months exploring Mars. What's it like to be a Mars explorer?
Feels good.
Sarah, how about you?
From my perspective, it's a learning experience. When we reached Mars, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, it's part of that also the process of educating the public and understanding what it takes to actually reach Mars, and that this is not the end of the journey. This is just halfway through the journey, because we need to do the science now, actually. And then like basically educating the people, the public, and us even learning on how to transition from this phase that we were in. For example, going from like right after launch, in separation from the launcher, the cruise phase, going into MOI, the Mars orbit insertion, and then from Mars orbit insertion, once we actually get captured by Mars, and then like the transition from the captured orbit to the science orbit. That whole process was something that myself and my team was, for the first time, we get exposed to such experience and such kind of work, and the public also engaging them and letting them know what's happening also tells them what it takes and how these missions work, and for example, like the calibration, the validation that takes place in the capture orbit, and then transitioning into the science orbit and doing the same thing. And basically, we started our science phase on the 23rd of May. So just 2 weeks ago, or less than 2 weeks ago, we actually started our official science phase activities. We were exploring Mars, but it was more about also validating and calibrating our instruments and our systems, which is a normal process in any outer space exploration mission, or in general in any space mission. But basically, now we will, I guess, get the true taste of exploring Mars very soon, and we are getting the data and experiencing that.
For me, what I've never stared at a screen as much as I have when I've seen data coming from the Mars mission. It's just mesmerizing, regardless which one of the 3 instruments it came from, be it the visible image, especially the very first one, that for me was captured at a very ideal day in Mars, and it's actually the image that's right behind me. But it showed all the features that we've been talking about exploring Mars's atmosphere. And like you said, Matt, it's largely ununderstood, the transitions that happens throughout an entire day, and comparison across everywhere on Mars during all seasons of Mars. And it allows us to better understand modern day Martian atmosphere, because we can't really look back in time and get a and see the historic atmospheric evolution of Mars. It's very mesmerizing. Every single instrument, every single image that has come out was an experience that I think I can't describe, especially doing this for the first time and not experiencing having another mission around another planet before this one. It's just been interesting and quite inspiring for myself, and I think for a lot of members of the team.
Matt, go ahead.
Well, I believe that you both worked on the DubaiSat program. Is that right? So what was it? What did you sort of learn during that program, which was really an Earth observing program, going to a Mars observing program? Do any of those skills or lessons learned translate over to Mars, or is it really literally a whole new world?
So, I mean, it's a difficult question to answer, in the sense that yes, we definitely learned a lot from those missions, from the first missions like DubaiSat 1, DubaiSat 2, in which we actually utilized those set of skills in the Mars mission. But at the same time, it was a whole new world going into working on a Mars mission, to be honest. It's 5 times more complicated than the missions that we worked on before. It requires very different kind of an operation concept, different kind of a design approach. The challenges are very different and unique compared to, let's say, Earth observation missions. The Earth observation missions, you launch, you put it around Earth, you're fine. Here you're talking about actually, the transition phase in which you go from Earth to Mars, and then you have the Mars orbit insertion, and then you have from the capture orbit to the initial orbit to your science orbit, and then from the science orbit starting your basically your science phase, and then you have hopefully an extended mission. So it is very different and unique. But I cannot say also that basically our previous experiences that we gained in previous missions didn't help. It definitely helped, and it definitely set the foundation for it. But we still had to learn a lot. Till this day, we're learning a lot.
Perhaps a good analogy on this comparison, without the risk factor or anything else associated. It's like you've learned how to build a helicopter and now you need to build an aircraft. They both fly. Some components are the same, but at the end of the day, they're two different crafts. So it's sort of that same aspect of, yes, you can have engineers interchange between both, but there's a lot of learning that goes into it. And it's the same for going from an Earth observing spacecraft to a planetary exploration one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've got more questions coming in. Let us know what you want to know down in the comments section. Also, let us know where you're watching from. We'll give you a shout out. The question that just came in was, what else is the UAE space program working on? Sarah?
Quite a few things. One of the aspects that is very important for us is the sustainability of the space sector, and more importantly, enabling more and more people to establish their businesses in the space sector. So we're leveraging on Earth observation to do that. We will continue expanding our Earth observation program. The UAE also has a human spaceflight program that is underway with astronauts being trained currently. Our exploration program is hitting is I think starting from my perspective, at least from the science perspective, with the Emirates Mars Mission. And as we continue developing that down the line, we'll be able to get a better grasp on what needs to happen next. And then finally, our communications, which is what started the UAE in space, the commercial communications arm continues to be up and running. And it's been, as has been the case for almost 3 decades now.
Matt, do you see a lot of parallels between the UAE space program and the American space program, especially early on?
Yeah, no, absolutely, especially early on. I mean, when I've done interviews with scientists whose careers began, either in the run-up to the Apollo program or maybe they were children during the Apollo program, I think you hear a lot of stories about how that then inspired folks to go on to careers to really look at NASA as sort of a dream workplace and to want to make contributions to planetary science and other areas of space science. And so I really do see a parallel here with the Hope mission, in that, in a sense, it is kind of like the UAE's Apollo moment. It's the big sort of big achievement that I think is going to, and sounds like already is, inspiring young people to go into science and technology and to, really see that as a career possibility.
And Sarah and Omran, hearing you all talk about seeing the data come back in and seeing your all's excitement absolutely parallels for me seeing, images from Mars coming back from Perseverance for the first time. And I love seeing that parallel there. Sarah, we had a question come in. You've been honored as one of Time's 2021 list of the 100 most influential people, as well as the BBC's 100 Women in 2020. How does it feel to be a role model for women around the world in STEM?
Odd.
And do you see yourself in that role?
I don't know. It feels odd. You never set out on any journey, especially one of great exploration, especially personally, to be a role model. But what was interesting.
It looks like we might be having some trouble with Sarah there. We'll come back to that question here in just a second. Again, we've got a few more minutes left in the program. If you've got questions, put those down in the comments section. Let us know where you're watching from, and we'll get to as many shout outs and questions as we can. While we're waiting for Sarah to come back in, I'm trying to see if she's back yet. I don't think she's quite back yet, but we'll have her back here in just a second. Omran, one of the questions that's come in is, how do you see the UAE as being role models for other countries?
So this is one thing that was part of the mandate that was given to the team about this mission. It was that to come up with a new approach and model of doing things, how to do things more cost effectively, more efficiently, and create impact, and how to look at space differently. Nations usually look at space as a way to, they label it as a space race. The UAE did not do that. We never looked at it as a space race. We looked at it as a space collaboration. And this is evident in the approach that we took by actually working with our knowledge transfer partners at the University of Colorado and at Arizona State University and University of California, Berkeley. We all worked as one team, as the Emirates Mars Mission team. It was not the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. It was not the team from the University of Colorado. It was all one. We had 450 people working on the mission, 200 Emiratis, 150 from our academic partners in the US, and about 100 subcontractors. So this is the model that we'd like to do. And the reason why we're able to deliver the mission, as I mentioned earlier, with the very limited budget, $200 million, and basically within 6 years, is because we collaborated. It's because we didn't start from scratch. We learned from others. So this is the model that we'd really like other nations to learn from and to look at space a little bit different, as a way to build capacity, as a way to address certain important national challenges. Like in our case, for example, when you look at the UAE, we have water resources, food resources are major challenges. Obviously, not from the Mars mission will be able to address those challenges, but it builds a set of skills and that ecosystem that you need, and it basically takes the standards all the way up to be able to solve such complex problems in the future. And it's about building that community that's able to handle that, and we're using space to do that.
That's amazing. Sarah, you're back. Thanks for coming back in. Let's go back to that question that we were asking about being a role model and how you see yourself in that role.
That was my computer reacting to that question, knowing that I didn't like it. I don't see myself, nor have I sought out to be a role model. So it's a very uncomfortable question for me to address. But this mission has been a learning journey for myself, and I've worked with extremely remarkable people that were a major part of making this mission a reality. I'm just blessed to be part of such a team that has created a large impact to myself, to each other's lives, and more importantly, to serve the mission and purpose I think that I personally have, which is expanding our realm of understanding across different societies and cultures around the world. And that mission has truly enhanced and instilled the importance of diversity in science, the importance of diversity in technology, in enabling a program to happen, and that's across the board. And I've just been blessed to work with such a diverse team and learn from them great things.
Awesome. Matt, do you have another question? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Omran.
So I'd just like to also highlight a very important point here, is that, I mean, Sarah, for example, is one of the outstanding, team members that we have in the Emirates Mars Mission. About 34% of the workforce in the Emirates Mars Mission are women. The leadership in the mission, 50% of the leadership in the mission are women. Every single one of them, they've been chosen to be part of this mission and to take the role that they have, not because they're women, but because of their achievements. It's because they earned it. So this is one thing also I would like to highlight is very important, is that, Sarah and her role and what she's been doing, she played a big role, not just in actually helping the UAE reach Mars, but also in building the UAE space program and currently building the UAE science technology sector. And again, she's in that role and she's leading that role is because she earned it.
That's awesome. Matt, we've got a few more minutes. Do you have another question?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you more about the sort of collaboration behind building this mission, the time you spent at the University of Colorado in Boulder, and then also your collaborations with the folks at Arizona State University and UC Berkeley. It sounds like you worked with some very talented people and people who have a lot of experience building spacecraft and building instruments for Mars exploration and for other things. I wondered if you could speak a bit more about, what that experience was like of working with these folks. Did they act as mentors or collaborators? What was that relationship like for you both?
Go, Sarah.
Go ahead. It's okay.
Okay.
In terms of personally, I think we started working with the University of Colorado, I think in 2014, and it is a means by which we've selected to develop our space program, and that's to work in collaboration with those that are well experienced in this field, because that's the way that you build experience in our own team. So we work together as collaborators in some instances, as them being mentors, especially when it was for the science, because we didn't have a science team at the time when we first started this mission. And we leveraged on each other's capabilities to get this mission across, looked at redefining how you design and develop such missions. So even the mission approach and concept, we looked at what is the best way to do it given the timeline that we had and the budget constraints that were on this program. And having people from a diverse set of backgrounds who had worked on several missions in conjunction with our team coming in, working on portions and subsystems and systems design on an Earth observation satellite, allowed us to relook how you go about designing a mission to another planet. And it provided us with a freedom to explore what way should we go about doing that. And that has enabled us to deliver this mission during the timeline that we had and on the resources that was given on this mission. We truly functioned as one Emirates Mars Mission team, regardless of all the institutions that we belong to. And this was a further driver towards the development of both capabilities and capacity, not only on our end, but also on the end of our partners. And that's something that we always look. We need to ensure that we have mutual benefit out of any partnership, and we're all growing as an entire entity. Otherwise, you're not really learning a new way of doing things. And that's important to highlight, that this spacecraft and the instruments that are on it have been designed for the first time for the purpose of this mission. There were people that were experienced on different missions, but we were able to take this amalgamation of differences, and that's why I reiterate the importance of diversity. Amalgamation of different perspectives to engineering. This is just diversity in engineering thought and in scientific translation into engineering components and spacecraft. This diversity enabled this mission to become true and become a reality. And this mix of experiences and breadth of knowledge that came to the table on this mission enabled that to happen. So it's been an immensely pleasurable experience overall to work on this team.
Matt, we've probably got time for one more question from you, and then I've got one more to finish us up.
Sure. So you've got 3 instruments on your spacecraft, and your primary questions are to do with the atmosphere. So I'm wondering, what do you think you'll find, or what do you hope you'll find, or what questions are the most important to you to answer with your instruments?
So first is a better understanding on the weather system of Mars. And second, which is our second scientific question, is the role that the weather system of Mars, and therefore Mars itself, plays in the loss of its atmosphere. It's been studied by other missions, the impact of space on loss of atmosphere of Mars, but better understanding what the weather system can do to loss of hydrogen and oxygen provides a better understanding on the evolution of the Martian atmosphere. And providing that full coverage, I'm really interested in a few months from now to getting sort of a weather report on Mars and what happens to the cloud systems, what happens to water, what happens to temperatures across the planets, what are the variations as related to the surface of Mars, and then how does that all add up upper in the atmosphere? How does it impact hydrogen loss? How does it impact oxygen loss? And start building these linkages that haven't been there before. And we're able to do that because we have 3 instruments that are looking at lower atmosphere and the upper atmosphere at roughly the same time in one mission.
That's awesome. All right, Nate and CJ want to know: is the atmosphere is the atmosphere of Mars what we need right now for life to flourish, or do we need to do something to it for humans to be able to live on Mars?
The forever question: no, the atmosphere on Mars is not human safe right now. And there's various arguments, scientific arguments and papers out there. So a few of them actually from the scientists that are working on this mission on whether or not we can evolve Mars into a habitable planet. But no, it's the only planet that's habitable for us to live in that we can get to is our planet.
But I love that the HOPE mission is gaining more information for all of us to learn from, to potentially send humans to Mars someday. And for me, as a former elementary and middle school teacher, knowing that a kid that sat in my class might be that first person to step foot on Mars, or somebody from the UAE may be the first person, I think that's really, really exciting. Well, thank you all so much, Sarah. We've gotten a lot of comments that want to reassure you that you are a great role model. And as somebody that works in that field of trying to inspire students, absolutely, it's been a pleasure to talk with you. And Omran, thank you so much for joining us today. Matt, you as well. It's always fun to talk about Mars exploration. To all of our viewers, thank you so much for watching. If you like today's show, be sure to head over to the STEM in 30 Facebook page or the Air and Space Museum's YouTube channel to catch the archive. Give those videos a like and a share so that other people can learn about these programs. And if you want to learn more about Mars exploration, check out the STEM in 30 episode, Perseverance, What It Takes to Explore the Red Planet. In that episode, you'll meet some of the amazing people who worked on Perseverance, as well as the middle school student who named the rover. And on June 23rd, we have an evening conversation with the author of The Martian, Andy Weir. We will be talking about his new book, Project Hail Mary, and a group of teachers will have a discussion with him about writing science fiction. And if you enjoyed today's program, be sure to give STEM in 30 a follow on Facebook and Twitter. And if you have suggestions, feedback, or ideas, we'd love to hear them. Kick us an email to stem30@si.edu. And as always, we really appreciate you watching. Take care.